welcome to The Married Therapist,
a relationship podcast
hosted by us, Luis and Amber Simide.
This podcast is all about love, conflict, and the gray areas.
If you like what you hear, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you're listening. Now let's get to the show.
So before we continue moving forward with all the things, we're going to rewind it back a bit and tell you guys about us because we realize we skipped that part. And I know when I listen to podcasts and they just jump in starting with whatever the theme is, I'm always like, wait, but I don't even know you. Who, what, when, where, and why. And so I'll start. So I was born in LA and moved to Hawaii shortly after. So I always say, whenever people ask, where are you from? Hawaii. But I also spent some time in various parts of Southern California, as well as a couple of years in Okinawa, Japan. My dad was in the Marine Corps. He served 22 years, hoorah, until he retired. So that's why I bounced around a lot of different places. But in my heart of hearts, I'm truly an island girl. I love the beach, love the sun, and always try to have some tropical vacation, but it's okay. It's only a couple hours to the beach. But anyway, so that is my upbringing. And then I came to the mainland for school when I was 19. I went to undergrad in Oklahoma. And then I came here to San Antonio in 2010. I actually graduated in December. So that's when I arrived. My family had already been here because a couple years prior, they had moved from Hawaii to San Antonio. So then when I graduated, it was a seamless transition back home. And then as far as work, I was working in higher education. I had done that in undergrad as a work study job. So it was kind of a natural transition. That being said, I didn't love it. It was just a job. I was there for the paycheck. I actually remember watching my PTO very, very closely. And as soon as it reached 8 hours, I was like, deuces, where am I going? The tropical destination, right? I was always trying to catch flights. And so I actually thought that I was going to be a singer. So I went to school for music, didn't wind up doing that, got my degree in communication. But even after I finished, I still was trying to do it. Long story short, just wasn't the path for me. So I just remember being in higher education, just grinding. And, it really wasn't grinding. It was a pretty simple job, but just working. And, kind of had this like professional identity crisis situation where I wasn't content. I wasn't fulfilled and I wanted to do something different. So I remember just sitting down with my mom and telling her about this. And she just was like, okay, title aside, tell me what it is that you think you would want to do. What are you passionate about? And I started describing something. I can't remember what I said. And what I described was exactly what a therapist is. So literally, I think that day I went home, applied to grad school, got in, and loved every second of it. It was amazing. So this was back in uh 2014 is when this whole thing was happening. So then January 2015 is when I started grad school and was always just very clinically minded. Like, this is what I want to do. I want to have my own private practice one day. And so, yeah, was able to do that. And that's why it's crazy now having my own private practice. It's been going on 3 years now, and I'm still like in shock. Like, wait, this is because I think about it, 10 years. That just dawned on me, that I had that dream, actually a little over 10 years, that I first was able to communicate what I wanted to do. And so the fact that it's here is still such a blessing. But yeah, that's a little bit about my background. And then, of course, everything kind of leads up to meeting Luis, which was in July of 22. So again, if you haven't heard that whole story of how we got together, check out our previous podcast. There will be a title and everything letting you know which one it is.
One.
Okay, the first one. I was like, but yeah, wanted to give some background about myself. So what about you?
Yeah, so for me, I also a product of the military. My dad was in the army for 20 years. And so I was born in Germany and then moved to El Paso when I was like 2, and then to Hawaii also when I was 6. And I was there for most of my elementary years, kindergarten through the end of fourth grade. And then after that, I went to Missouri, which was rough, right? Like going from Hawaii to Missouri, it's just like a very sad transition.
Culture shock.
Culture shock for sure. And it was like September, so it was starting to get cold. And I'm like, what is this cold? So lived in Missouri pretty much up until went to college. Went to college for a couple years in Missouri, in Warrensburg, and then I transferred schools to a school in Texas, and graduated from there, and then moved to San Antonio in 2011. And so really, as far as my career paths, it kind of wandered all over the place for a little bit. So was going to be in the military for a little bit, ROTC, that whole thing, and then going to the military. And then I wanted to be a math teacher. I was a math major for a year, and then I was like, don't want to do that. And so, but then I switched to special education, and then I switched again. I actually got my degree in church ministries. Thought I wanted to go into ministry, and then after turning within the ministry, like I was just like, I don't know if I want to do that. There was a lot there. Maybe that would be another episode for another day.
Mhm.
But yeah, so didn't want to go into ministry, but graduated college, and really in my last year of undergrad, after thinking about things I'm passionate about, things I really enjoyed doing, things I was good at, a lot of it was gearing towards counseling. And so initially wanted to be a school counselor. And in order to be a school counselor in Texas, you have to teach for 2 years. And so got my alternative certification. I taught, and I was in the special ed world for 7 years. And actually, my last year teaching, I was teacher of the year for my campus. So,
E-
but yeah, right after I got that little Apple trophy, I pieced out because I was like, it was a lot. I always tell people I loved teaching, but I hated being a teacher. If you're a teacher, you know what I mean. And so
all the politics.
all the politics, the bureaucracy, the red tape, all the things that aren't teaching. I just couldn't get past those things. So anyway, went to grad school for counseling and initially was going to school counseling track, but then switched to community counseling and still love working with kids. So now I currently work with children and adolescents in a community mental health agency here in San Antonio. And so yeah, I'm one of five boys. And so all boys in my family have two older brothers, my mom and my dad, and then two younger brothers, my dad and stepmom. And so all boys. So I never grew up with any girls, but you know, it's just kind of been my life. But yeah, so that's kind of family dynamics and how I grew up and all that. And so
Nice. So
yeah.
just wanted to share again some background information so you guys know who the heck you're listening to and watching. So now we can transition into our topic for today.
Yes.
Um,
So we have a fun topic today. We were actually talking about this when we were going to Austin the other day. It's so hard for us to not jump into these conversations in the car because we were like, it's so natural for us to like have a conversation topic and then just go into it and
yeah.
then just talk for hours. And so we're like, oh, this would be a great topic for the podcast. So you guys are in for a treat. So we were talking about how our expectations for marriage changed over the years from when we were like a kid up until we got married. So do you want to start first?
Yeah.
Okay.
So for me, I just wasn't the kid that imagined my wedding dress or even my wedding day. That being said, I also didn't grow up imagining a marriage and what that would look like. And that's just because of the marriage example that was in front of me, which was
Yeah.
my parents. It was just very complex. And so I just remember focusing on just being a kid.
Yeah.
I'm one of 6 kids and I have 3 sisters. And so it's like 2 older brothers and then us girls are younger than them. And so very much just Barbies and karaoke and dancing and TV. We were very involved in church.
You guys ever
Um,
play like house and stuff? Like,
yeah,
okay.
so we did because we were huge Barbie fans. I remember playing with Barbies just as a teenager because my little sister is 6 years younger,
Yeah.
but not even feeling any kind of way about it because I'm just very imaginative. And so it's really cool to be able to create this whole world through your Barbies. So all 4 of us would be playing for hours and hours and hours, very elaborate scenes.
I can totally imagine you guys just coming up with these crazy scenarios and like,
Yes. And as an aside, as sisters, we all wouldn't fight amongst one another, but any conflict we did have was between the Barbies. because the scene was just so crazy. So then we would leave the room and go to our mom and be like, "Mom, da 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 da," and she's like, "Wait, what? This is the Barbies?" And she would be like, "Work it out." So of course we would.
Which is like quintessential play therapy, right? Like as kids, you kind of work out your emotions through play. And so you
Yeah.
guys are totally doing that without realizing
Yeah,
it.
exactly. And so yeah, we did play house through the Barbies, but it was always their life and not mine. So it was this clear separation.
Gotcha.
So that was how things were for the most part. Now, as I became older before college, it very much was purity culture, which is just all about courtship and being
Right.
intentional with dating and not just being frivolous and things like that. So I never saw it as, oh, this is a natural thing. Also, I was homeschooled.
Well, yeah.
So it's not like I was going to school in high
Have
school.
access to all these kids all the time.
Yeah, there was such a separation, just very removed from kind of the norm. It was that's the world, right? We don't do it that way. So it very much was stranger danger. We don't
Yeah.
really go over there. There was this song I remember that was all about like no more dating. I'm just waiting for my prince. And another one called like I Kiss Dating Goodbye, which
Oh, that was a book that was really popular when I was
yes.
in college. Yeah.
Yes. And at the time I was eating it up and it resonated, but now, oh my gosh, I don't
Yeah.
align at all with that.
Yeah.
Just because of, again, the environment in my home, like with my parents being complex and then this whole purity culture thing, I just never really thought about it. Mm. And if I did, it just was like very strict rules. And I very much was focused on school and work and performing arts because I was involved in my church's performing arts program. Once I leave here, I'm going to go to college and get my degree. And then, if anything, that part of me would would only come alive after college. Like I'm not gonna let any kind of thing like that stop me.
Mhm.
That's not gonna threaten like my success. This is very serious.
Were there times when you were like thinking about marriage, but then I can't let my brain go there because I have to like finish school first, or it wasn't even a thought?
So I do remember being in undergrad in Oklahoma looking out my window and I saw a couple sitting on the bench. There was this really pretty pond with birds. And I remember being like, ooh, I want that. It wasn't marriage, but it was a relationship. Because I hadn't, yes,
Yeah.
because I hadn't dated in my little homeschool high school
Yeah. Take your sister.
career. We were very involved in the church, but even then it was like very sparse. And nobody really piqued my interest. I do remember thinking people were attractive, but it was older people,
Oh,
like older guys.
yeah.
Older meaning maybe I was 16 or 17 and they were in their early 20s, like
Okay.
21, 22.
Talking like 40, 50 years. Like, oh,
No, 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 no. But it was just like, "Ooh, that guy's cute." But that was it. Anyone my age, I was like, immediately no. But yeah, so fast forward, I'm in college. I see this couple by the water just looking really cute and just kind of feeling a little tug in my heart, like,
yeah.
"Ooh, I want that," but not marriage because I'm still in school. So
Yeah.
for me, it was just not a thing. Now, at my school, they have this thing called Ring by Spring, which I think you have that too, which is basically everybody being in a rush to
Right.
get engaged.
Mainly to have sex.
Yeah,
It's
because
just like,
everybody, well, allegedly,
right.
everybody was abstaining from sex
Yeah.
until marriage. And so it was this huge pressure to get that ring
Yeah.
before school ends, especially if you're a senior.
So you can have
Um,
guilt-free sex.
yeah, right. But yeah, I didn't date anyone in
Yeah.
college. I did have 1, 2 offers, but they were people just that I was like, "What?" I was like, "Thank you for asking." And I love the boldness, but I just wasn't interested. I did have crushes, but I called it with like elite. It was a small college, and I feel like all the girls liked
The same
the
guys.
same 8 guys. Basically, they're like little celebrities on campus. So it's like, "Ooh, that guy's cute," but like it's kind of comparable to thinking a celebrity's cute.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like there's zero chance. And so yeah, that's what happened. I didn't start to actually yearn marriage until I would say my mid 20s once I graduated and came back home and started working. And I did meet someone. That person became my first boyfriend. And that's when I was like, ooh, I could see myself. Yeah.
Yeah. And so as far as like expectations, even though you weren't really thinking about marriage, did you have like any thoughts in general about marriage as a concept, like when things should happen, like timelines and all of that, or was that just not even on your radar at all in any capacity?
Not so much timelines, but I just have always been a very serious person, more mature than I guess people my age. And so I did know enough to realize it was more than a wedding, because
Right.
there are other people who are like, I've always dreamed of my wedding. It was always wedding, 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 and never marriage.
Right.
And so the older I got, the more I did realize, okay, it has to be this serious thing that has a really strong foundation of communication and trust and things like that, introspection and vulnerability. So yeah, that's it became a reality. I'm just very much like an experiential learner,
Yeah.
right? And so it didn't really all hit until I was with my first boyfriend.
Yeah. 'Cause it's like you can't even imagine it without experiencing it on some level.
Right,
Yeah.
'cause you're with someone and then there's lots of conversations to have, and there's maybe some disagreements or conflict or whatnot, and that it's just a million and one opportunities
Yeah.
to flex all of those things, and it's so humbling being in a relationship because
Yeah.
it's just like a look in the mirror, but I've always been a person, at least I think, who is introspective and
Yeah.
has some level of insight and awareness. And if somebody's calling me out on something and it makes sense, I'll apologize, or
Yeah.
I'll try to adjust whatever it is.
So like when you first got with your first boyfriend and you started kind of being more marriage minded, what were your expectations of marriage, like just in general? And like have those expectations or thoughts about marriage, have they changed over the years? Or are the thoughts you had about marriage at that point the same you had going into this marriage?
It definitely changed. I mean, I'm 37 right now, and at the time when I was wanting that, I was about 25 is when it really started. And so at that time, I was codependent. I was a people pleaser. I didn't really have a strong sense of self. I was confident in other areas, but when it came to a relationship, since I had never been with anyone
Yeah.
and have father wounds, that area was stunted.
Right.
And so it was just like, okay, I'll do whatever. I'll not necessarily say whatever, but definitely in my actions. Like I just wanted everything to go well.
Yeah. To feel
Um,
loved and not feel abandoned by a man.
right,
Yeah.
yeah. And so again, I'm just so much more mature now, and through lived experience um and schooling, because this was right before I started grad school, and that really opened up my eyes. But yeah, at the time, I'm realizing now it's kind of hard to answer your question because one, I can't exactly remember, and two, it just was like, okay, you're my boyfriend. You love me. I love you. We're committed to one another. I am okay taking the leap towards the next step, which is getting engaged and getting married. I'm going to be open to feedback and working on myself. And I hope that you are too. And that's it, right? Like,
Mhm.
I'm a person of faith. And so I want to incorporate that into the relationship. I want to make sure that we are spending time with our family and our friends and exploring the town and having great experiences. That honestly was it.
Like what you thought marriage would be like, just
Yeah,
yeah.
I knew it was gonna be a give and take. Like,
Right.
I did not have this fantasy that it was gonna be an easy thing, but I definitely thought it's feasible,
Yeah.
especially if we're both committed. We don't know if any relationship is gonna last.
Right.
So again, I just decided with what was happening at the time, okay, this is worth a risk, right? And the thing is, before I decided to be official with this person, we were best friends a year and a half before because we were coworkers. We weren't best friends because we were coworkers. That was just a fact.
Yeah, it's just kind of the conduit to
Right.
become best friends,
We met at work
friends.
and it just kind of evolved.
Yeah.
And so I felt like I knew enough because we would just go out to eat lunch every single day, and we did go very deep. And so I was just like, okay, I'm good with this. You
Yeah.
know, there isn't anything scary. Even though I was young and my prefrontal cortex had just developed,
Just finished forming.
I do feel like
Yeah.
I was a good judge of character.
Yeah.
And also it was cool because there are other people who can vouch for him.
Mm,
Like, yeah, no, he's the real deal.
good guy.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. And so since then, obviously that was 12 years ago. How do you feel like your thoughts of marriage after experiencing your first one and then also being in this one now, how have they changed as far as expectations and what married life looks like?
Yeah. One of the biggest things that pops in my brain is how it's so important to help yourself.
Mm.
Because again, I was codependent in the
Yeah,
past and I didn't know anything else. So I've just learned, yes, your partner can help you with a lot of things, but the onus is on you.
yeah,
Like, I have the father wounds. I have rejection sensitivity, issues with abandonment, issues with emotional dysregulation. So you can't heal me,
right.
right? You can throw some things in, sprinkling some seasoning,
Yeah,
into this, but I've got to come up with the core ingredients to help myself, to
yeah,
fix myself, to really uproot it, turn it inside out, almost doing like a autopsy, you
yeah,
know? And so for me, what that looked like was going to therapy and really digging deep and being willing to sit in the discomfort. In therapy, it's like, let's talk about how things were growing up. Let's talk about your relationships with your caregivers and
yeah,
do you feel like your core needs were met and things like that? Because I know in therapy, often we are known for being like, okay, let's go back to childhood. And
right.
some people may not like that, but it's so true because
Yeah,
that's where things are formed, our attachment and just our brain development and our personality. There's so many things. So therapy helped a ton. And then grad school, and then I would just take classes. Like I took a codependency class. Um,
did you know there's like an AA for codependent people? It's called CODA.
no,
Yeah, Codependency Anonymous. I went to a like it was one of my assignments in I don't know if it was grad school or undergrad, but one of my assignments I had to go to like two types of support groups. I went to an AA group and then I went to a CODA group. It was
that's
interesting. Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
That's amazing. It's one of those things where I bet other people would agree, like, you don't really know you're doing it
right.
because that's just kinda how you've always been, but once you step back and you realize what it means to be codependent, it's very humbling and like,
Yeah.
"Ugh, yikes, I need to work on myself." So, yeah, I did that. I also took a class on boundaries,
Mm,
and if people are wondering, these classes were through my church at the time,
yeah.
and it was very, very helpful because it really opened up my eyes to, again, the really deep-seated issues that I have. So yeah, that was a big thing that I realized when it comes to marriage is that in order for it to have a really strong foundation, you've for me, you've got to be introspective. You got to really dig deep and try to understand things. So again, that way I'm not putting it all on you because it's not fair to you.
Yeah.
You're showing up into my life being like, "Hey, what's up?" And I'm just dumping baggage,
Yeah.
right, on you, and so it's a fine line, right? Yes, when you're partnered up, it is important to support your partner, but we've just gotta be careful that we're not putting an excess amount of weight
Right.
on the other person, so, yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing that I've learned as I've
Yeah.
gotten older.
And I'm glad you said that last part because I was going to say that too. It's like, on the one hand, yes, the onus is on you to do that healing work. But I think as a partner, my job is to support you well as you are healing.
Mhm.
Right. And so, not to do anything that would make your healing more difficult. Right.
Right,
Because I think that's the thing too. Like, it's a partnership. Right. And so, we are partners in each other's healing journey. I'm not the one carrying, but I am the one to support you as you are carrying,
right.
because carrying your stuff is a lot of work, and you get tired
Yeah,
and all that. And so, yeah, I think that's definitely important to remember. And I'm glad you, yeah, mentioned that. That's awesome. I'm glad you've done all that work because this version of yourself I love.
thank
And
you.
granted, I mean, you're welcome. And granted, I didn't know you before, but
Yeah,
I've I know Amber 2.0, and
Yeah,
it's
that's exactly
yeah,
what I call it. As much as we say like we wanted to meet each other 10 years ago.
yeah,
Well, I was a very different person.
yes,
So I think maybe it could have worked, but I think it would have been a lot
yeah,
harder.
yeah,
And
100%.
I think we were just I don't even know if we were ready or if we were even available. I think we've
Yeah,
tried to go back in time and figure out if it could have worked. And I think it almost probably wouldn't have worked
yeah,
statistically.
it probably wouldn't have, or like you said, it maybe could have, but it would have been very difficult. It would have been a lot of things to work through and a lot of
Yeah.
things to kind of unpack and heal through, and which maybe we could have done, but it's yeah, it would have been a lot more difficult for
Yeah. So now I want to ask you the same
sure.
questions.
Yeah, no, I think for me, it's so funny because, and this is very on brand with just how we operate in our relationship, is like everything with me was very opposite and not as stereotypically male as your journey was. Like you said, you weren't really thinking about marriage or the wedding or anything like that when you were younger. Where I absolutely was. I mean, I wouldn't say I was thinking about the wedding necessarily. I had no thoughts on that. But yeah, I remember when I was a kid, like thinking about when I wanted to get married, when I wanted to have kids.
Mm.
And it's so funny because when I was a kid, and I say kid, probably like elementary school, maybe middle school, my long term plan was to be married by 18 and have kids by 20. So that was like, because when you're,
That's so interesting.
yeah, when you're like 7 or 8, that seems very old. And
Oh, okay. You were really young.
yeah, I mean, I was young, and granted, the only example I had was my parents, and they got married very young and had kids very young, and so that's kind of the framework that I was working with, and so that's what I figured was normal. But now, working with kids who are teenagers and being 36 now, I'm just like, I would have been a train wreck if I got married when I was 18. But yeah, so it's interesting, and so that was kind of already where I was, like as far as timelines go. And that was really all I thought of at that point, just like, I want to be married by this age and have kids by this age. As I got older and I started to be like, interested in people, I remember my first girlfriend was in 6th grade, doesn't really count, but but like in high school with the first girl that I was like interested in, seriously, she was the first person that I pictured marriage with, and I was thinking in that way. But again, it was more, I think, honestly, looking back, I think it was more the companionship. I wasn't really thinking about
Hmm.
the intricacies of marriage and what that would look like. I think it was more so like, would I enjoy being around this person, like,
Right.
for my life?
Which I think maybe for other people it would equate to a relationship. But do you think because you're in the church and purity culture and it was just marriage, marriage, marriage all day long, your brain
Yeah.
automatically was thinking, okay, this companionship equals to marriage.
Yeah, probably on some level. And I didn't grow up in the church like you did. Like I didn't,
Yeah.
I
I know for you it was high school.
yeah, so I started going to, I mean, I went to Catholic church when I was younger, kind of on holidays. We didn't own a Bible or anything like that growing up. I mean, at least I don't think I did. So yeah, really the first time I started to really dive into that was in 8th grade and then into high school. So it was all very, very new. But yeah, once I got in, it was very much like purity culture and kind of that same mindset. It was like you date to marry. And so yeah, I think in my mind I was like, I'm not going to date anyone that I can't see marriage with. I'm not even going to pursue them unless I can see myself marrying this person.
Right.
Right. And so I think with her, she was the first person that I could see myself marrying, really just because her personality was fun and she was really sweet and whatever. And so anyway, so that's kind of what that mindset was then. I think, that didn't work out, obviously. And so went to college and all that stuff. But I think even throughout college, I was expecting to find my wife throughout college. So I think on the one hand, yes, I was very serious about school and stuff. But I think on the other hand, I was always kind of having one eye open just to kind of see if there was any potential around me. And so, and because my brothers got married when they were young, they were both 21 when they got married. And they met their wives in college. Actually, my middle brother, Javi, he met his wife in high school and then they went to college and all that stuff. But yeah, and so again, it was kind of reinforcing the idea that you meet your person in college and then you get married at the end of college and then you start living your life.
Yeah.
And so when I got to the end of college, that wasn't happening. Then I'm like, well, I guess I'm running late.
Yeah.
And so then I just feel like I'm behind all the time for for the next 5 or 6 years, maybe 5 years. When I got to like 25, I was just like, I mean, I was still kind of hoping and scoping, but I think at that point I was more okay with my age and where I was, and kind of recognizing the wide spectrum of ages that people get married at, and looking at the data, right? Realistically, people are starting to get married later. And then, I had goals like career goals and things like that. So anyway, as far as like timeline, it kind of stopped. I stopped caring about timelines at that around that time. But yeah, as far as like the marriage goes and like expectations for that, I think for me, I think and this is something that I've had to kind of work through as I got older, is like remembering that not everyone is me, and so
Yeah.
I think I expected everyone to be just like me. And so because I am this way, I expected other people to be that way. And so
Yeah, that's big.
yeah, so when I saw that they weren't, then I'm like, "Oh, something's wrong with them," or like, "Oh, they're not a good fit for me,"
It's like
or it's
never
just
you.
yeah,
It's
and so
always
it's right, and so it's like, um, but yeah, so then as I started to kind of unlearn some of those things, and then also just like that idea that dating and marriage were almost synonymous, I think,
Mm,
um, that was something that kind of carried on into my really in my late 20s, and I think on some level that's what led to my first marriage, was because like we were dating and we were serious. And so in my mind, I'm dating her. And so like I have to get married to her almost.
yeah.
And so even though I was seeing all these red flags, it was just like, well, we're already in this far. So might as well just go, we just got to work through it, even though that's literally not how things work.
Yeah.
So, um,
Regarding that, do you think you ever had a mindset shift? Like dating is dating and marriage is marriage. Yes,
yeah.
sometimes they connect, but other times they don't.
Yeah. I think really after I got out of that marriage, I started thinking more so that way. Just like, it's okay to date, and that's what allowed me to go back out into the dating pool, was just reminding myself that you can go out and date, and then granted, I mean, again, this was, like, over 6 months after that whole thing happened, but anyway, yeah, so I allowed myself to just remember, like, you can date people and not get married to them,
Yeah.
you know?
Like what
Like
concept
right?
most people would say duh, but
Yeah,
for the communities that we were
yeah,
brought up in, I know mine was my whole life and then yours was high school on. It very much is
yeah,
preached from the mountaintop.
yeah,
Date with the intent of
mhm,
marriage. Be careful when you do it. Guard people's heart.
yeah,
Don't just be out here frivolous, this and that. But it's just, to me, it's so damaging. Because
yeah,
how am I supposed to know if I want to marry someone if I don't date them? Dating, I love someone said, dating's collecting data,
yeah,
right? So yeah, it's fun to go out to the movies or pizza or Topgolf, but we're asking each other questions. We're trying to figure out if our values align, compatibility, lifestyle, personalities, hobbies. And so you have to do that. Like it's pretty wacky to think that you don't need to do that. But I'm just all of a sudden going to just commit my life to you.
yeah, and I mean, I understand the mindset, especially if you kind of fall within that community and believe all that. It's like the purpose of dating should be to get married. So on some level, you should, according to them, like on some level, you should have marriage in sight. And so on that, I don't necessarily disagree, but I do think sometimes people put too much pressure to get married.
And that's what I'm talking about
Yeah.
is
Yeah. Yeah.
every single person that you talk to on the app or in person or go on a date with, you should be marriage minded. Well,
Right.
I don't know if that's even a possibility
Right.
because I don't know you. I have to collect data. So that's what I'm saying,
Yeah.
that it's okay to date multiple people. Now, of course, I think it's important to communicate,
Right.
right? What you're doing. Don't send mixed signals and stuff like that. But again, if we're just eating pizza and if we're just kind of, you know, doing whatever, going to the river walk or doing some like tubing or whatever, that's okay.
Yeah.
I think if it makes sense and if there are vibes and you guys are on the same page, then you keep dating, 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 and then you decide to be exclusive, right? And then we could talk about marriage. So that's what I wanted to
Yeah.
kind of hone in on that I didn't agree
Yeah.
with.
Yeah, for sure. I think people can fall on 2 ends of the spectrum, and I think both can be, I won't say damaging necessarily, but both can be unhealthy, right? Where it's like you are going into it only thinking about marriage and like just laser focus on that. But on the other end, just being with someone without any goal of anything in mind, which I mean, maybe. I guess if you just want the companionship and the other person's okay with that,
Yeah.
then that's fine,
So
you know?
with both things, it's communication.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, correct. So communicating expectations, because I think, yeah, you can go into it with a mindset and assuming the other person knows, but we're not mind readers. And so they could be marriage minded and you could be totally like, I just want to do this casual thing for
Yeah.
6 months and then see where it goes. And it, yeah, if you're not aligned, that'll be a problem
Right. And
down the line.
they're both equal.
Yeah.
The marriage person, the marriage minded person isn't better
Right.
than the casual dater.
Yeah.
Oftentimes the exact opposite message
Right.
is what's preached, in the communities that we came from. But everybody's different. It's okay if you just want to casually date and just not commit to something serious. You could not be ready for multiple reasons.
Yeah.
But again, the issue that comes a lot of times is when this casual dater does not communicate that. So
Yeah.
they're with someone who does not want to casually date, who wants something more serious, and then it's weird and mixed messages and you're stringing them along and
Or, I'm sorry.
yeah, so people
Yeah.
just need to be honest.
Yeah. And I think it can also happen where where people initially start as casual and they're both in alignment with that, but then one person catches feelings and like wants to be more serious,
True.
but then doesn't communicate that and just
Mhm.
expects the other person to kind of be where they're at.
Mhm.
And it's like, no, we agreed on being casual. And so that's where that person's mindset is. And then the other person gets hurt. What's like, well, you didn't communicate that, like, hey, I know we said we're going to be casual, but I'm starting to feel more invested in this and I
Mhm.
want to continue this in a more serious way. What are your thoughts?
Yeah.
Right. And then if they are like, no, I still want to be casual, then that gives you all the data to like either move on or just kind of
Mhm.
manage expectations for yourself. But yeah, I think kind of going back to the whole marriage conversation, I think now obviously I know that it is a partnership. We are both people that have lived whole lives before each other,
Mhm.
and all of that affects us in different ways, you know? And so most of the things that we experience, the difficult emotions, the difficult just things, hardly ever have to do with you as a person or me as a person. It's kind of built up over years. And so, just recognizing that, like, okay, we're both people kind of healing in our own journeys and
Yeah.
growing as people. We made a commitment to do this together. And yeah, that's what we're doing,
Yeah.
And so I love it.
Me too.
Yeah. But yeah, it is interesting how the reason I thought of that question even because I was just thinking about how different my thought of marriage has been over the years, and I was just curious what yours were. So it's interesting to kind of hear
The evolution.
perspectives. But yeah. So I guess we can ask you guys now: are there things that you guys thought about marriage, maybe that that you thought that now as a married person, you're just like, I had that way wrong, or vice versa. I was right about this. It really did work out this way. And then if you're not married, are there thoughts of marriage that you've had historically that hasn't really changed, and maybe that's why you're still single? Or are there things that you are changing about what you believe about marriage? Are your beliefs changing, evolving as time goes on, or kind of where that's at with you? So
And I also want to speak to the people who don't want to get married,
yeah, that's okay too.
who who just don't subscribe to it.
Yeah.
I want to know why. I want to know, have you always been like this? Has it changed? Because I think statistically, most of us do want to get married. That being said, there's a growing number of people who just don't, and that's totally fine. It's not for everybody. So, yeah, I definitely want to hear from those of you who fall in that camp too.
I think so that kind of, and this is maybe a different topic for a different day, but I do want to touch on it. I think because I do feel like the world is really designed for married people, and so there is privilege that comes with being married, right?
Right.
And so because that's just kind of what's accepted, and so when you're not married, all of a sudden you're seeing as like something is wrong with you or something's not right, and that's not it's not true. Like everyone can get married if they want to, and they can choose to be single if they want to, and that's totally okay. And so,
Yeah. That made me think of like the tax breaks
mm,
that you get from being married and
yeah,
even just health insurance and things like that. It very much is designed for people who are married. You get all these extra goodies, if that's something
yeah,
that you want to do. And if not, you don't get to reap those same benefits.
right,
And I don't like that. I think
yeah.
that is problematic. So we want to hear from you guys who, again, fall into that camp.
Yeah, there's so many things that I'm thinking of now that are just like designed for married people. That anyway,
Yeah,
yeah,
that'll be another
yes, another
episode.
topic for another day. But I've enjoyed learning more
Yeah,
about you
I know.
and just
Me too.
hearing how you've progressed and evolved over the years. It's really
Yeah,
cool. So
same.
glad to be here with you.
Same.
Well, thanks for joining. And if you guys have any questions, comments, feel free to drop those, or you can email us, squad@gmail.com, with any questions that you guys have.
Yes, and be sure to follow us on our social media platforms. We'll have all the different social media
Yeah.
handles in the show notes. But thank you guys so much, and until next time.